it's Jason Hartman, and welcome back to another lesson where we talk about the most tax-favored asset class in America, possibly the entire world, but I don't know the tax code of every country on earth. So I'm going to talk about a big player in the real estate game. My company has clients that invest with us from all over the world. Even if this does not apply to your country, it does apply to the US. And there are a lot of advantages for foreign investors investing in US real estate. Suffice it to say, this talk will be about an extremely beneficial and extremely successful strategy that many investors, both US and abroad, have used to invest in property. And it is called the 1031 tax-deferred exchange. So as we dive into this lesson, we're going to learn about the 1031 exchange. We're going to learn about what conditions need to be met for a 1031 exchange to take place for you to defer taxes, and about the depreciation, recapture, and deferral benefit, and it is a huge benefit, of a 1031 exchange. Now, at the time of this recording, I currently recently just finished a 1031 exchange, exchanging a property back east into two properties actually in the state of Tennessee. And I'm also doing another big 1031 exchange now on a large apartment complex that I sold with a client, and am exchanging that into at least 2, maybe 3 other properties in different states around the country. So this is a phenomenal wealth building strategy, and really it is important for you to look at the overall big picture of income property investing. And this is one of the things that makes it so incredibly successful and tax-favored, is the most tax-favored asset class in America. So the term 1031 exchange refers to the Internal Revenue Code. Okay, so when you hear people talk about an exchange or doing a 1031, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the IRS Code 1031 as it relates to this. The rule allows for capital gains, otherwise thought of as maybe profits or gain or money you made, if you want to put it really simply, on a property to be deferred into the future. And you can do this if certain pretty simple conditions are met. And ask yourself the question, if you're going to receive money, when would you like to receive the money? We've touched a little bit on this course on a concept called the time value of money. And so when would you rather receive money? Well, you'd rather have it now than later, right? But if you have to pay money, when would you rather pay it out? Well, you'd rather pay it later than now, okay? So if we can defer our taxes, that is a very good strategy, and we can even defer them up to the point of our passing. So this is a phenomenal estate planning tool as well. So generally, an exchange can take place if a property has been owned by a single owner for more than a year and is being sold for the purpose of exchanging into or purchasing a property of equal or greater value. And when I say a property, I really should say multiple properties, because you can sell one property and buy several other properties under a 1031 exchange. And the rules here can get a little complicated, and outside of the real estate world, other things are exchanged too. This is done with cattle and airplanes and other kind of crazy things like that. But really, the best rules, I think, apply to income property or investment grade property. And I'll tell you something else. It doesn't work in businesses, so far as I know. I remember when I had a company that I sold to Coldwell Banker about 10 years ago, I went around and I looked for tax experts and I asked them, is there anything I can do? I'm going to be receiving this big check from the buyer of my company and I don't want to pay tax. And, in my history of investing in real estate, I knew I could always sell that real estate and do a 1031 exchange and defer my tax liability. And they said, with a business, tough luck, Jason. You got to pay the tax. And I said, well, what if I buy another business? And they said, it doesn't matter. The IRS doesn't have a 1031 exchange for a business, but it does have it for real estate. So again, this investment real estate being the most tax-favored asset class in America. And of course, depreciation makes it that way too, not just the 1031 exchange rule. So deferring the taxes on your gains can dramatically increase your ability to build wealth. Remember, taxes are the single largest expense that any of us have in our lifetime, and it is incumbent upon us to figure out ways to legally minimize our tax liability and defer any tax liabilities we have into the future. And that's the beauty of the 1031 tax-deferred exchange. So deferring taxes allows for all of the accumulated equity to roll forward into a new property so that you don't have to pay the taxes on each transaction when you sell. So the first thing is consult a tax and legal professional as needed. Okay, this is a complicated area of the law. The government doesn't make anything simple, but the basic rules are pretty simple. And unless you're trying to do something extraordinary with your exchange, it's relatively simple to do. Okay, but I always want to give the disclaimer that I'm not a tax or legal professional. So consult a CPA, a lawyer as needed. And here are some of the conditions. So it has to be the same taxpayer. You have to identify a new property to purchase or multiple new properties to purchase, and you have some time limits on this. And so here's how that works. When you sell a property, within 45 days, you have to submit a list, and the list has some restrictions. One of them, for example, that I recall, is the 200% rule. And that keeps the investors out there doing 1031 exchanges from just listing every property in the United States as a potential exchange property. In other words, if you're selling $1 million worth of property or $100,000, doesn't matter the amount, then you can only identify as much as 200% of the value of your relinquished property, the property that you're selling. So if it's a $100,000 property, you can identify maybe 2 other properties that add up to $200,000 or less, but you can't identify 14 properties that add up to $1.4 million. The IRS will not let you do that because they know we'll just provide them a big list and then decide later, right? So we have 45 days to identify the properties that we are considering for what's known as our up-leg property or our exchange property. The ones we're considering buying and replacing with that one, the replacement property, okay? And then we have 180 days to do the exchange, okay? And that means to close the deal. Now, I'm in this phase right now because I've identified my new properties, my replacement properties, and I haven't closed yet on those properties. So now I'm working hard to get those new deals closed, but I think they're going to be phenomenal deals. So it's very exciting to be able to sell that big apartment complex and not pay taxes. I get to defer that into the new properties. So trading up. Now remember, the net market value and the equity in the property and the debt on the property. And here's where it gets a little tricky with this concept called debt relief and things like that. And that's where you always want to run this by your tax professional just to make sure you're doing it right, okay? But basically, you got to buy something of equal or greater value than the property you're relinquishing. And this can get a little complex when you have financing involved in it in terms of how the financing is handled. So just a little word of caution there. That's definitely an area that trips people up, and I want you to be careful of it and run it by your tax professional, okay? And then the hold time on the new property. This isn't something for home flippers or people who are flipping apartment complexes or single-family homes or any type of property for that matter. This is for the buy and hold investor. So the intent, and that's a kind of a complicated legal term in this sense, has to be that you're planning to hold the property for investment, not to just turn around and flip it or sell it right away. So let's talk about depreciation. So we've talked about the holy grail of tax benefits, and that is called depreciation. Mostly, I know, people think of depreciation as a bad thing, but when it comes to income property, it's a glorious, wonderful thing because it's known as a phantom write-off or a non-cash write-off. It's a tax benefit that we may qualify for as investors, but we don't have to spend any money to get it year after year on a single-family property for 27.5 years. It's a beautiful, wonderful, incredible tax benefit. But when we sell a property that we've been taking this depreciation deduction or tax benefit or tax write-off on, and if the property hasn't actually depreciated, well, then we run into something called recapture, where we have to recapture the tax benefit we took on the property and pay taxes on it. So that's no fun. Who wants to pay taxes? Nobody, right? Not even Warren Buffett, who's made a big issue about that, which I think is kind of ridiculous that he has. But nobody wants to pay recapture on this depreciation. So the beauty is the 1031 tax deferred exchange can also defer our recapture tax liability. So this depreciation that we've claimed during the ownership has to be recaptured, but we can roll it right into the 1031 tax deferred exchange and avoid paying it. So here's how that works. This means a property might be fully depreciated, it might be partially depreciated, and we've taken $50,000 in depreciation tax benefits during the time we owned the property that we're selling or relinquishing. Well, the IRS wants their money, but we don't want to pay the tax. So that becomes part of the 1031 exchange, and we can defer that into the new property. But it gets better. It's like they say on those infomercials, but wait, there's more. and here's how there's more. This depreciation gets to start over on a new property. So not only did we defer the capital gain from the sale of the property, the profit we made, maybe the appreciation, it's increased in value and so forth, right? We got to defer that. We got to defer the depreciation, but then we bought a new property or maybe multiple properties, new ones, replacement properties, and we get to start the clock all over again on the depreciation schedule. So we get another 27.5 years on the residential property or about 39 years on the commercial property. So another reason the residential is better is because it has a shorter schedule, and that means we get to take that tax benefit more quickly, about 25% more quickly than we do on the commercial properties. So some of the key ideas here. Well, the 1031 exchange can supercharge your wealth building because think about it. If you sell a business or if you sell a stock and you have a profit on it, you've got to pay the tax right then. The IRS has their hand out and says, hey, you just sold that, you made money, give us a cut of your profits. But on the real estate, the income property type real estate, the investment real estate, you can say to the IRS, hey, I know I made a profit, but you know what? I'm going to pay you later. And you're going to see in a moment how you can even avoid that. Okay? So the key benefit here is that you have indefinite deferral of capital gains and depreciation. And remember, you get to start your depreciation schedule over again. And you can roll those into new properties. In many cases, and now see, this is under current law, as I understand it. Check with a tax advisor. This area is complicated. I'm certainly not a tax advisor, and I'm definitely not an estate planner, okay? But in many cases, upon death of the owner, there's a step up in cost basis of that property or that portfolio of properties to current market value, so you can pass it on to your heirs and they don't pay any tax. This is like magic, folks, because that tax bill, it could be 30 or 40%. I mean, that can really slow you down on the road to wealth creation. Every time you pay a stock or sell a business and you've got to pay taxes, if you could reinvest and have all that money working for you and not pay the government, I mean, that's huge. It's a big deal. This really adds up, okay? It really, really adds up in a big, big way. If past capital gains have been deferred and the basis is stepped up, you can totally avoid, possibly, I want to say. It's not for sure. You got to plan it right and do it right. And you know, the laws could change, obviously, okay? Everything is subject to change. And you could avoid the capital gains and depreciation tax entirely. There is potential for that. So there are many details. Definitely consult your CPA or an attorney or even a tax attorney on this stuff. This is definitely not an exhaustive study. There's no way we could put that in this lesson. This is a big area of the law. By the way, the IRS website is a great resource. And if you have insomnia, you know, trouble sleeping, I'm kind of joking with you there, but maybe not. You can download all kinds of information from the IRS website. They have some great pamphlets that explain this stuff, and it will definitely help you sleep. So it's critical to make sure that you have good professional help to execute this stuff. So really easy badge here. Now that we went over the concept of the 1031 tax deferred exchange, just describe the advantage of using this section of the law and how it will help accelerate your wealth building strategy. There's a template for you that'll help you out. Just upload the document and we will see you in the next lesson.